so let's get started. So I mentioned before, my name is Pooja Gupta. I'm the host for Employee Center Academy. You would hear from me every month talking about this. If you're new to the Employee Center Academy, let me start with what these sessions are, what you should expect, and so on, and the logistics around it. So these are sessions that the product team at ServiceNow has created for you so that you have a forum to ask your questions and interact with product teams directly. This is not a presentation, so we are not here to deliver a webinar. We will actually be in the system, configuring the product live, showing you different features and capabilities, and answering your technical questions live in this session. And then we do this every month. So we will be back again next month. March 16th is going to be our next session. And the thumb rule, if you want to mark your calendars and you haven't already, we have an Employee Center Academy session every third Wednesday of the month. So how do you interact with us? On your screen, you should see a Q&A option. And you may need to move your cursor a little bit to see that sometimes. Use that to ask us questions. We will be monitoring that quite regularly throughout the session, and we do not need to hold till the very end to take Q&A. We take Q&A in the moment so that there is good engagement. So please keep posting your questions as and when they come to your mind. Use the chat for just exactly what we are doing right now. Interact with this global audience that we have in the session today, and feel free to share your thoughts, comments, feedback, good things, bad things, anything that is on your mind. We highly encourage that. The slides and the recording for this session will be available and will be made available in a couple of days for you to go back, view it and share it with your peers, go back and revisit it when you're actually implementing. So we make everything that we will cover today available for you. The best way to access these is the resources that we have mentioned over here. So we have Employee Center Community Forum, where you might have gone to register for this Academy session. All the recordings, all the past sessions, and a lot more extra guidance in terms of FAQs, implementation guides, like Q&A with the product team is all happening on the Employee Center Community Forum. So highly encourage you to use that. Then we have a Now Create on Customer Success Center, and there's a lot of good resources on how to quickly self-implement as well. Encourage you to view that. And then we have a YouTube playlist. If you want to just review all the Employee Center Academy sessions, go to YouTube and you can actually see them one by one. All right, so with that, let me talk about the topic today. Today, we will be focusing on user experience analytics on Employee Center. Experience and employee experience is obviously a big focus for Employee Center, and you do need some sort of analytics to understand how that is going on, or the state of it on Employee Center. We have a very special guest to cover this topic. It's Zahi Boussiba. Zahi, you want to introduce yourself and take it forward from here?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Pooja, and thank you all for joining this session. I'm joining you today from Tel Aviv, Israel. And as Pooja mentioned, my name is Zahi, and I'm the product owner for User Experience Analytics. Let's briefly review what we'll discuss today. So we'll start with an intro to User Experience Analytics for those of you who are not familiar with it. We'll do a quick live build and demo how to enable User Experience Analytics on your instance and specifically on your Employee Center portal. Then we're going to do a deep dive to the actual product. We'll kind of go through all the different features and functionality. And obviously, as Pooja mentioned, we're encouraged to ask questions. And then we'll review some additional configuration and customization options for UX Analytics on your specific instance. We'll leave time for Q&A at the end, and we'll also try to kind of take questions as we progress in the session. So what is User Experience Analytics? So this is ServiceNow's usage analytics platform for all the different assets that is that are offered in the Now platform. So initially, UX Analytics was integrated with the mobile platform as part of the Orlando release. We've expanded to Service Portal in Paris, Virtual Agent in Rome, and in our latest San Diego release, we've also expanded to Next Experience, which is the new UI experience that will be delivered as part of the San Diego release, and also with all of the workspaces. So UX Analytics is integrated today with many ServiceNow assets, and in the upcoming releases, we're planning to integrate out of the box with essentially the entire ServiceNow product suite. And what it enables you is to measure the performance, usage, adoption of the different features and functionality in the products that you deliver to your end users. One important note regarding UX Analytics is that it behaves slightly different than other ServiceNow products. We do have a central architecture. It means that the data is not actually stored on the customer instance. We have a central repository, so all the data is stored there. It means that UX Analytics data is not consuming any storage or table space on your instance, and the data is actually securely transported from the central repository to your instance. And today we're going to focus on our web analytics solution. The terminology for it is user experience analytics for Service Portal, and obviously Employee Center is kind of running on our portals infrastructure. So we're going to focus on our web analytics dashboard, but just to make sure you're aware that we also have UX Analytics offering for mobile, and we also have these specialized dashboards that are actually powered behind the scenes by UX Analytics. We have the virtual agent conversational interfaces dashboard and also the AI search dashboard. Both are actually powered by UX Analytics as well. We'll briefly review the key features. So as mentioned, kind of tracking your core KPIs for usage around how many users, how many sessions, what's the average duration, how many page views, etc. Very advanced capabilities around analyzing user flows and how users actually navigate in our portal, the ability to create advanced funnels and cohorts reports, the ability to drill down to the single session and single user level, our very advanced retention and engagement analysis, and on top of it, the ability to create advanced user queries and segments on essentially almost the entire data set that we offer. I think one last slide before we kind of jump into it. As a data analytics platform, we're very conscious around data privacy regulations and restrictions. So there are different behaviors of our tracking per the location of the tracked user. So this is the default configuration, and we can review how it can be changed later. But out of the box, users that are located in the US will be tracked automatically. Users in the EU will receive a pop-up notice, and they would need to explicitly opt in. So these are European Union countries. And users in other locations of the world will receive this notice with an OK button, kind of notifying them that their activity is being tracked. Users can also obviously control if they're being tracked or not. And again, we'll review some of the admin configurations available to you. So let's get started with the super quick and easy setup of UX Analytics.
Zahi, could we take a question which came online?
Absolutely, Pooja.
So Rob is asking, is user experience analytics the same-ish or joined in any way to the performance analytics, that is the portal analytics by PA?
Great question. So the kind of what you're familiar with as the SP log table is essentially not going to be kind of maintained anymore. Obviously, it's still available to you, but UX Analytics is kind of the next gen analytics for portal, and should definitely be kind of your main go-to solution when consuming portal analytics.
Thanks, Zahi. The next one is, what are the limitations for user experience analytics when using edge encryption?
That's a great question. So essentially, there shouldn't be any limitations as far as I'm aware, because the tracking is done directly on the end user's device on the browser. So it's sent directly from the browser to the central repository. So as far as I'm aware, and I'll double check that following our call, there shouldn't be any impact.
Thanks, Zahi. The next one is, how do we see the privacy statement linked into the privacy notice?
We will cover that as part of the customization section, but the default privacy notice and the link are actually stored in a system property, so that can be viewed and edited to be replaced. One comment: unfortunately, currently we don't support localization for the pop-up, so it can only be offered in one language. I will say that customers that want to create their own pop-up, it's actually doable. So that's an important point.
And last question before we jump to the live build, are there any licenses required for this?
No, so for the service portal analytics and employee center, that's kind of delivered as part of the basic package, so no additional licenses or cost is associated. Great, so let's get started with the setup. So the setup is super easy. So we have one plugin, it's called Service Portal Analytics. You can request that plugin or install it. Obviously, in this instance, it's already installed, so you can see it here. So that's the first step, and that's obviously outlined in the presentation that will be shared, but just wanted to show it to you here. And then the second step would be enabling the analytics tracking for your specific portal. So in my platform administration, I would search for portals and click on portals, and I will see my list of portals. So here you see that we have employee center. We actually have two employee centers here. So once I click on the portal, you see this create analytics settings button, and the button will automatically appear after you install the plugin for all of your portal records. So the only thing I need to do is to click on create analytics settings, and that will enable, let me go ahead and do that. And that will enable analytics tracking on that specific portal. You see here that we have a few configuration options. So once I clicked on create analytics settings, you can see that it is enabled by default. And you can see that we have another configuration here for enabling unauthenticated user tracking. By default, UX Analytics will only start tracking users after they log in to the portal. Obviously, in an employee-facing scenario, all employees should probably log in, but you might have areas in the portal that are public, that is technically possible. So if you would like to track those areas that don't require any authentication, you can check this box as well, and then update the settings. There is a notice here that essentially what it says that the ServiceNow consent management mechanism only kicks in for logged in users. So if you are enabling this feature, it's very important to make sure with your privacy and legal teams that everything you're doing is kind of compliant with your organization policies and legal policies that are relevant for you specifically. So that's pretty much it for the setup and installing the plugin and creating the analytics settings for your relevant portal. Now, after I've done that, I can immediately log in to my analytics dashboard. So if I type user experience analytics, you see a few options here. And if I'll click on the dashboard link, I will be immediately redirected to the dashboard. Now, one important note, obviously, the data tracking will only commence after you enable the tracking and from that point forward. And we'll also review later how you can disable tracking if you want to do that for any reason. So we'll actually get started and talk about the actual dashboard. So this is the dashboard. This is the layout. The layout is fixed. You cannot edit it or change it. The default date range is to look at the last 30 days. You can, of course, change it to look at any date range you'd like to analyze. Now, you can see that we're tracking the number of active users and the number of new users. In an authenticated scenario, meaning that we're only tracking authenticated users, so this is actually counting users. So even if an individual has used multiple devices, we will only count him once as one active user. And just to cover the definition of new user, a new user, it means that he had his first session, or a user that had his first session during the selected date range. So here we have 18 total users, 9 new, and 9 are returning users that were active prior to January 17th. Now, regarding the number of sessions, so the way we define a session in UX Analytics is from the first interaction the user has on the portal until we have 30 minutes of inactivity. So the data in the dashboard is near real time. It means that we will actualize the data 30 minutes after the last user interaction, that interaction will show up immediately on the dashboard. It is possible for you to change this configuration to either a longer or a shorter period. So that is not supported through a UI currently. So that will require a support case, but it is technically possible. Okay. So we covered how we count users and sessions. Page views are tracked automatically as well as part of the integration. So we don't need to tag any pages. So every time a user will visit a page, that page will be counted. And the pages actually correlate to the pages you have in your list of portal pages. So you see here, each page has an ID and a title. So when we will look at the list of pages in the UX Analytics dashboard in a minute, we'll see the exact same IDs and title. Here in the center part, we can see a trend line for the total number of sessions. I can group it either daily, weekly, or monthly. And anywhere you can see this download button, it means that you can export the data to a CSV file. And same for users, I can group the number of users for daily, weekly, monthly. And I can also kind of look at the data for active users versus new users. In the bottom part, we can see some data relating to retention, funnels, and events, which we will get into in a minute. I see a lot of questions, so maybe we can pause for a minute and take a few questions.
Yeah, absolutely. One interesting question is, does the session period of 30 minutes mean that after 30 minutes, there'll be a new session recorded for the same user?
So it's not 30 minutes of usage, it's 30 minutes of inactivity. So the sessions can be, a single session can be as long as 4 hours. After 4 hours, if there's still activity, we will kind of cut the session and we'll start a new session. So obviously we track the entire experience and all of the activity made by the user.
Then the other question is, does page views include individual knowledge articles? So I guess it's more about when do you consider it a page view versus an article view? So
yes, so the default, let's say the out-of-the-box article view page is counted as a page. It's the same page ID for all the article views. So the analysis of which articles were actually accessed will be done by an event. So if you want to know how many times the article page was viewed, then that will be counted as a page view. And if we actually want the breakdown of articles, we can access that through custom events, and I'll demonstrate that in a minute.
Thanks, Zahi. Let's just take a couple more questions, and then we can continue. So one question is there a delay from when a user interacts with the portal and when the data starts appearing in the dashboard?
Mm-hmm. So the delay is, so essentially the session is closed after 30 minutes of inactivity. So let's say at 10 p.m. I viewed a single page and clicked a button and then left the portal and didn't do anything. So at 10:30 p.m. the data will be refreshed in the dashboard and I'll be able to actually see it and analyze it.
Thank you. Do you want to continue or take more questions right now?
Yeah, let's continue, and hopefully we'll have enough time at the end of the session for more questions. So I'll kind of review the dashboard. I'll go with kind of a bottom-up approach. So we'll start with kind of the lowest level of tracking, which is the single session tracking. So UX Analytics actually captures every session, every page visit, every event, and it shows up in the sessions grid. So we have the menu on the left. We started with the overview screen, and now we're looking at the sessions grid. So here we have a list of all the sessions. Overall, we had 133 sessions in the last 30 days. I'll pick one random session here. So we can see that this is user number 44. It means that that's the 44th user to use our portal. We can see the duration of the session. We can see his city level location. So the location is actually captured from the IP address. We don't store the IP address, just translate it to a city level location. We can see that this is the second session of this user in the portal. And overall, this user had 3 sessions and he spent 6 minutes overall, all time on the employee center. And here we can see the timeline, which actually shows us what the user did. So the user visited the homepage and went to the search functionality, applied a search for headphones. That was actually me. And then visited a few different other pages. And you can see here that a catalog request was submitted for Adobe Acrobat Pro. So that was the catalog request that was submitted during that session. And everything we see here, so this is obviously a single user, single session experience, will be aggregated in the reports we'll review. The important thing here is that we can now start querying the data. So if, for example, I want to know the number of sessions where a specific event was triggered, so I can add the query clauses here. So for example, let's see in how many sessions search was performed. So we can see that search was performed in 21 sessions. So we can even, let's take our headphone search. We can even ask a question in how many sessions we had a specific search query. So we'll run that query and we'll get the one session that we just saw. So this is the area that I will answer questions of in how many sessions did something happen. So that's one level of kind of our ability to query data. The second level would be running a user query. So I'm not interested in the number of sessions. I'm interested in the number of unique users that did something. So I'll switch to the users menu. And here we can see that we have 45 users all time that have used our employee center. And now we can start building a query. So you can see that we have all of these different properties here. So for example, if I want to query how many users from the US have used the portal, I can build this query. Apologies for this error message. This is kind of a testing or a QE environment. So it's not always 100% stable. But in essence, again, I can build pretty complex queries here. So for example, I can search for all the users from the US that had a session in the last 7 days. And in that session, they triggered a search event. And I can even, again, maybe let's go with the same query we've used before. So you can see that this is a pretty complex query that I just built. All the users from the US that had a session in the last 7 days where they triggered an event called search start, and the search query value was headphones. And I'll hit search. Hopefully it will work this time. Great. So we got one user back, and I can actually click on the user record. And you can see this user actually had 2 locations Again, this is me. This is my user. I actually connected to two different VPNs. That's why I'm showing it both in Amsterdam and in California. And you can see this is kind of the user modal window where we can see the entire user history. We can review all of the user sessions. And we can also review some custom properties. So this is one cool area that I want to talk about. So you have the ability to customize the data that is sent and presented in UX analytics. So we have the developer docs that actually explain and walk you through how you can add those custom events and custom user properties. So I kind of strongly encourage you to think about the custom data points that you want to share. So for example, in this screenshot, we can see that this customer sent a role property and a user type property. So essentially you can put your own custom data points and then use them in your queries to better segment the data and kind of better understand behavior across different segments of your user base. Okay. So we kind of looked at the session data, the users data, and the third report I want to show you is around the custom events. So events, those are the actual actions performed by users in the portal. So we have some out-of-the-box events. So everything you see here, these are out-of-the-box events that are delivered as part of our integration with Employee Center. As mentioned, you can add your own events. And the great thing is that let's stick with our search event, is that every additional data point that will be added to the events will be aggregated automatically and presented in the dashboard. So we see our search start event. We can see that we had 64 search occurrences in the last 30 days. Here as well, I can aggregate the data daily, weekly, monthly. And you can see here the most popular search queries. We can look at it at a pie chart. We can also look at the table view, and we can download the data. So we can see that paid time off is the most popular search query in my employee center. And in the same way, I can expand any of these events in order to further understand kind of how many times this event is being triggered and what specific properties, what's the typical breakdown of these additional properties. So just from a data model perspective, we kind of covered the three out of the four building blocks. We saw kind of the user queries, session queries, and event queries. And last but not least are obviously the pages. So we have users trigger sessions, and in those sessions, we visit pages and trigger events. So under UI analysis and pages, we'll see the list of all the pages in our portal, sorted from the most popular to the least popular. Not surprisingly, the homepage is the most popular page in our Employee Center. We can see a very cool flow analysis. So we can see the previous page and the next page. So obviously, most sessions start and users land directly on the homepage. And unfortunately, here we can see that 50% of sessions terminate immediately. And then we can see the distribution for all other pages in this Employee Center. Now, if I want to focus on a specific page, so I can click on the next page, for example, search, and then I'll be able to see this analysis for search as well. So we can see that most users come run search from the main page, and then they would typically go to a service catalog item or back to the home page or would end the session. So again, this is very valuable to kind of understand behavior and kind of user flow. I'm gonna pause here for a few more questions.
Yes, so you might have covered this. Can you report on searches that have 0 results?
That's a good question. I don't think we track it out of the box, but that's definitely something that I can kind of relay to our search team. I don't think it's currently supported.
Thanks, Zahi. A question that has come a couple of times, and I did answer on the chat panel as well. Can we track at a topic level? The answer I had given was more that you can track it. It's just that with Employee Center, we have the same ID for all topic pages. So it kind of gives you a generic topic level analytics, but you may require a little bit more configuration to get to an individual topic page, and you may want to expand on that, Zahi.
Sure. So the way we track pages, so for example, you can see this is Employee Service Center, and the ID of this page is EC Pro Dashboard. That's the homepage. If I, for example, go to the IT topic, then you would see that the page would be updated to employee taxonomy topic. So that's the page that is common for all the different topics. And you can see that we have the topic ID here. So out of the box, currently, we don't track it. That's definitely, that should be something that ServiceNow tracks out of the box. So that's something on the roadmap. But if you have kind of an immediate need to track it, so that's a perfect example for using custom events. So as part of your custom implementation, you can just read the topic ID from the request URL and then push it as a custom event, and that would give you this exact granularity. So the event name would be view topic, and it would have a property of the topic name, and then I can send, or topic name or topic ID, and then I can send IT, HR, etc. But again, this should definitely be an out-of-the-box capability. What I mentioned is kind of a workaround for that existing gap.
Thanks, Zahi. The other one that I found interesting was, how do I find out the number of users who have viewed a knowledge article on the portal, but ended up creating a ticket in the same session?
That's a great question. So I think that can be an excellent pivot to the next topic, which are funnels. Okay, so funnels essentially allow you to measure exactly what you mentioned. So that would be a series of steps, and then kind of analyzing the conversion between one step and the next. So what we're seeing here, this is a funnel I created, a funnel that is for users who started a search, then visited a service catalog item, then triggered an event submit catalog request, and then visited the request summary page. So we can see that 5 users overall have used search, 4 of them continued and visited the service catalog item, 2 of them actually submitted a request, and those 2 also continued to the request summary. Now, the specific question was, can I analyze if they did it in the same session? So that's a little bit trickier, but what I can do, I can limit my funnel to a single day. And then I can ask this question, and it will not be for a single session, but it will be for like a 24-hour period, which is kind of an approximation. Okay, if I really want to drill down to the session level, then I would have to do it manually. So I can filter. So for example, users that viewed a knowledge article and let's say submitted a catalog request. Okay, and then I can hit search. And then that's obviously a bit of a tedious work, but again, if this is the type of analysis you would want on the single session level, you can achieve it by running this session query. Now going back to the funnels, so funnels is actually a very, let's go back to the last 30 days. It's a very important capability, allowing you to kind of explore a very specific path and see kind of the overall conversion for that specific path. Building funnels is super easy. You just click on new funnel, you give the funnel a name, you see that the default loopback period is 1 month. It means that we will analyze data up to 1 month back, which is great. It means that once you create the funnel, you immediately get data, the historic data, and you don't need to wait for new data to come. So you can see that you now, when you're creating a funnel, you need to kind of list all the funnel steps. So we can create a simple funnel. So we can go and select a page view, for example, approvals, and then let's select another page view approval, for example. I don't know if this is an actual flow on Employee Center, but let's say this is a 3-page flow that I want to track. So I can create the funnel and then see how user actually progress. Now we have something that is, I would say, kind of similar to funnel, but it's more of an exploratory mode. So under UI analysis, we have navigation paths. A navigation path will actually show you kind of all the different navigations aggregated into a single view. So the report starts here at session start. We can see that most of the users start at the homepage and then end the session. We can also see that from the homepage, employee topic is obviously pretty popular. And we also have search, which is popular. So if we want, for example, to look at the topic page, we can make it the center of our analysis. And then I can see what's the typical navigation from the topic page. Okay, so we can see 37% session end, and we have 33% that go to a service catalog item. Some go back to the home page. So this is a very, very nice analysis that will give you kind of a very detailed view of how users navigate in your employee center. Again, just to maybe emphasize the difference between this analysis and funnels. So funnels is kind of to analyze a very specific path that can incorporate page views and events and other actions, while navigation paths only analyzes page navigations. And it's also, it's analyzing pages or kind of navigations, while funnels analyze unique users. So if I just want to answer the question, how many users did A, then B, then C, I would use funnels. If I would like to know how many navigations went from page A to page B, so that would be with navigation paths. Okay. The next advanced report I wanted to showcase is the cohorts report. Okay, so cohorts will allow me to measure how often users engage a certain recurring item that I want them to perform. So for example, let's try and analyze a cohort for viewing a knowledge article. So my cohort definition, users will be grouped. Let's say I want to focus on new users, and then users that triggered the view knowledge article event. So it will take a few seconds for the cohort to process. But essentially, what I've done here, I created a cohort that is showing users that have started their first session and then came back and triggered the event view knowledge article. This will answer me the question of how often do users actually engage with knowledge article. Okay, now, unfortunately, this portal doesn't have a lot of data, so we can see that we don't have any interactions with knowledge article. Maybe if I'll expand this to a longer period. No, so overall, again, not a lot of usage data here, but I can actually show you a different cohort so you will have an understanding of what to expect. So this is how a cohort would look like. And for example, here we can see that for the week of February 7th, we had 4 users, and 75% of those users, meaning 3 users, returned and used the portal again within the same week. So this is an out-of-the-box cohort for retention, just measuring usage. So people that new users and then users that came back and used the portal again. While in the cohorts area, you can create a custom cohort for a specific activity. I just want to give it another shot with search that will have more data. So again, new users that triggered an event. Let's go with the search start. the numbers here are not dramatically different, but just to show you the chart with data here, you can see one user and one new user for the week of January 31st, and that user actually engaged search within the same week. So in a real world scenario, this would be a very interesting analysis to run and see how often users engage with a specific feature. Pooja, I think it's great timing to get a few more questions.
Absolutely. And one question that might relate with this kind of analytics is, can you filter out based on a role or a group? For example, just admins.
Great question. So unfortunately, that's a limitation in the dashboard that we're aware of. That's our number one priority. We're actually adding a lot more advanced segmentation capabilities as part of the Tokyo release. What can be achieved now is user segmentation through the users table and sending custom data. So let's say if I have a role property, if I want to send, so I can send that role property, it will automatically show up here. And then I can select the property here and filter by that property and understand the behavior for that specific group. So if I have a sales manager role and I want to know how many sales managers have done a specific activity, then I can select that custom property and then give it a value. And then kind of query for the specific behavior I want to understand. So if I want to know how many sales managers have engaged search, I would run this search again. Obviously here we have something that is slightly different, but the concept is clear. But indeed, this is a bit of a limitation in the existing dashboard.
Thanks, Zahi. The other question was that one person is reporting that they have a huge slice for the other option in their charts. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to know if there is a way to break down that other and like do a little bit more deep dive in it.
So a huge other means that there's simply many unique values, and each value is not getting a lot of hits. It is possible to export the data. So for example, here we have like a 30% other. So when I export the data, I will be able to see a breakdown of the values. We do have a limitation. I believe if there are more, I think it's around 1,000 unique values, then it will be grouped here as well. But as long as you don't have a very large number of unique values, then it should be exportable. When there are many unique values, you should be mostly be interested in kind of in the top results. It just means that the results are very kind of, there's a lot of different values that fall in that bucket.
Thanks, Zahi. I think you covered this question, but I just want to expand on the second half. Can you export these reports? So yes, you can. The other half of that question is, can the dashboard be displayed on some sort of a landing page, which is not like the ITEL view or the backend view? So for like a user.
So that's not possible because this is kind of a separate web app that is not hosted with the platform shell. So unfortunately, that's not possible. You would still need to kind of log into the instance and then launch user experience analytics dashboard manually.
Thanks, Zahi. The other question, which I found pretty interesting, was, is it possible to see the channel used while accessing Employee Center? For example, an employee using Employee Center through Microsoft Teams or now mobile.
So we have something kind of close, but not quite. So you will be able to see the device type. So we support desktop, mobile phones, and tablets. So that's the only analysis you'll be able to see. Also, if you look at the sessions grid, there's some device information. So we provide the browser type and the OS type and version. And we also aggregate on those in these reports, but you cannot know if it was through Teams currently.
No worries. And I think that's also like a limitation on employee center side, I guess, because it's the same ID that is being used over there. But yeah, that was a good question. Then I believe you answered some of these questions here. Like, can you create custom events to track? I believe that will be the funnel, but you want to expand on that?
Yeah, so so we have the out of the box events that come with kind of the default implementation, and we also have the ability for customers to add their own custom events. So the implementation is kind of super simple. So this is an example for the code that your portal developers would need to add. So each event has a name. In this example, managed account, and the events can also have additional custom properties. So we can see manage account, that's kind of the main counter. And we can see the 3 additional properties here and their aggregation. Also important to know that the page ID will be automatically aggregated for your custom events. So if you add an event, the page ID and a breakdown will show up automatically.
Thanks, Zahi. The next question is, can the number of clicks be tracked? So I believe this is just in general number of clicks in a session for the user.
So yes, it can be, it's not out of the box, but that's a great example for using custom events. So in theory, I can kind of register on the click event in JavaScript, and then fire a custom event to measure the number of clicks. And just one comment regarding this resource. So we have a link in the slides and a specific slide talking about custom events. Okay, it's here, and this is the link. You can see the main API calls. So that's definitely supported. We have 10 more minutes. I just want to for 2 minutes, I want to go through a few additional customization and configuration options for the portal, and then we'll have probably some more time for questions. We kind of covered the how to enable or disable tracking, and also talked about enabling unauthenticated user tracking. We talked about kind of adding custom events and overall customizing the data for users. By the way, you can also customize page tracking, the kind of the default page tracking. So that's possible as well through the API. A few notes on how to grant access to UX analytics. So obviously, admins have access, but access can be granted for all users with a portal analytics viewer role. That's for viewing the portal. And we also have a portal analytics admin that can control the settings, like enable, disable, and the unauthenticated user tracking. Overall, we kind of have a hierarchy of roles. So we have an analytics admin that controls both mobile and web analytics, an analytics viewer, and it has its own hierarchy for viewing the data. And the viewers, if I have a viewer role, I can essentially access the entire dashboard for that channel. Meaning, if I have portal analytics viewer, I'm seeing all the data in the portal dashboard. So this is actually very important, how you can customize the user consent behavior. So there are 2 properties that will enable you to kind of change the default consent behavior. So the first one, Glide Analytics user consent pop-up disabled. So if you set it to true, then the pop-up will not be presented. And there's another property of auto consent that you can set to true. And then if you set these 2 properties to true, it means that all users will be opted in for tracking without the consent pop-up. This is for the scenario where companies can obtain consent in different ways, maybe through an employment agreement or through any other way. So you can actually disable those consent pop-ups. Now, I recently encountered a question from a customer where they actually wanted to show the consent pop-up to all the users. So that's technically doable as well. It will require some engineering effort. We're planning to release a KB article on how to achieve that probably in the next 2 weeks. But meanwhile, if this is something that is relevant for any of you, then for now, we can submit a case on Now support, and then our engineers can provide you the information directly on how to either create your own custom pop-up or present the pop-up to all of the users. So these are essentially supported scenarios. 2 additional customization options. So if you would like to view or modify the consent text, then that's available under System UI Messages, and we have Glide Analytics Consent EU text record that you can edit and kind of update. And you can also do the same for non-EU and non-US users. So that's the notice pop-up. So these customizations are available. And in the Tokyo release, we will support I18N for those messages. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, currently it's not supported. Excellent. So we have a few more minutes for additional questions.
Thanks, Zahi. That was really, really valuable content. Couple of questions. So one person is mentioning that they saw a deflection tab in funnels. Could you expand on what is the definition for deflection that we are using in this, and what additional thing people could do with it?
So actually, I'm not sure who created this specific funnel. Not sure. So this is just the name. When I create a funnel, I give it the name. So it doesn't necessarily actually refers to a real deflection. So you can just ignore it. It's not really related to deflection. And let's say if you have your own kind of scenario or idea of what is deflection. So for example, someone visiting a knowledge base article and then ending the session and not creating a ticket. So that is a report you can create and then measure kind of the deflection for that specific path.
And just to add to that, the question was also asking if it can somehow be related to help text call deflection rate. I'm not sure if that is possible.
No, not possible.
Yeah. If people are using virtual agents, that's something that you can track over there from a conversation standpoint, and that could be one way of measuring the deflection there.
Correct. So maybe I'll touch on that very, very briefly. So conversational analytics is also powered by UX Analytics. The data just for VA resides on a separate dashboard. I'm not sure if we actually have data for VA analytics in this specific instance, but you can apply pretty much the same capabilities I demoed for Portal on VA as well. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have any data here. This can be a topic for a separate session, but just wanted to share this as well. You can enable the conversational analytics store app. And that will give you the additional power of UX Analytics for virtual agent.
Yeah, that's a very, very important point. Thanks for bringing it up, Zahi, because a lot of the viewers today would be using virtual agent on the portal. So there's already interest for a session on virtual agent dashboard. So we can probably plan it for a future Academy session.
I can definitely see, by the way, the deflection is kind of the main KPI in the dashboard. It's kind of the first KPI in the VA dashboard.
Good, thank you. The other question, which is again came up in multiple places, do we integrate with capabilities like Google Analytics for anything?
So no, so the data is kind of stored in ServiceNow. You can export it to CSV files. We're also exploring the option to provide an API to export the data. It's not yet supported, but it does not integrate with external solutions. One exciting thing to share that we're working on, again, in the Tokyo release, is the ability to use UX analytics data as part of the UI builder. I can actually share a quick mockup, but essentially you can import some of the KPIs and use them in custom dashboards. This is a mockup. So for those of you who are using UIB or dashboard builder, then when adding a new data source, and user experience analytics will be another source. And this will enable you to essentially customize the dashboard. So you can build your own layouts and present them in a different visual way than what is delivered in this experience.
Cool. Thanks, Zahi. We're running out of time, but we'll just take a few more questions. One question is, can we have the consent pop up based on country or location? This is the end user consent.
So let's say our default policy is the one I've shared. Anything else will require a self-implementation. So you can apply whatever logic you have in mind. As I mentioned, we'll release a knowledge base article on that in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, if that's an urgent need, you can create a support case and we'll guide you through how to do it. But in that scenario, you control how the pop-up will show in which locations, and you just kind of propagate the user's selection to the analytics engine, and you actually control when analytics tracking starts. So it is possible, but requires coding.
Thanks, Zahi. And I guess this question is again a roadmap related question. They're asking if user experience analytics can generate suggestions based on the analytics, like how the process optimization piece works.
Great question. And yeah, we just had an amazing customer call earlier today, and that was their main feedback. So I would say absolutely yes. So if, for example, we're looking at navigation paths, so one alert could be, hey, did you notice that most users immediately leave the portal after landing on the homepage? So this, for example, can be a great recommendation. We're definitely going there. As you know, kind of ServiceNow has really prioritized AI as a significant capability that will be embedded across the entire product portfolio in incoming releases. So yeah, we're definitely going there, and that's kind of really exciting.
Thanks, Zahi. I guess that was a really, really great way to kind of bring this session to wrap up. Someone is also asking if we will be sending out the recording for this demo. So yes, the recording will be available on community as well as YouTube. We typically take 2 to 3 days to post it out. So wait a few days for it to show up. But thank you so much for all your participation today. And thank you so much, Zahi, for sharing all these details. If there are any questions that were unanswered, we will get back. Yes, Zahi.
And then thank you, Pooja, for hosting this great session. I will also add that we have the ServiceNow community website. So you can definitely drop your questions there as well. And we make sure to answer all of them. So thank you again for attending. It was a great pleasure for me. And I hope you'll get a chance to utilize UX Analytics for Employee Center as soon as possible.